Hello everyone, I'm Shambhavi Bote from Team Journeys. I will be your host for today, and I would like to quickly introduce our guest for today. It's an immense pleasure to have our own team member today as a speaker, Apurva Zadhav. He is a well-known macro photographer. He's been doing macro photography for past 6 years. He started really from the basic with a basic gear, and that really shows that you don't really need an expensive gear to get results and get amazing photos. His photographs have been published in the famous Sanctuary Asia magazine and for 2 times. His photos have also been featured in Srishti exhibition for macro photography. He has excelled himself in spider identification and taxonomy, and he takes a special interest in entomology. We would like to open the floor to him. Apurva, would you like to start?
Thank you so much for introducing me, and thank you so much for everyone joining this evening. I'd like to start. Today I'll be talking about macro photography for beginners. Uh, at times we don't start to explore the things because we don't have enough knowledge, or we don't have enough tips and tricks. Those are helpful for you to start doing macro photography. So today we'll be discussing about it. So today we'll be going through the basics of macro photography, its definition. Then it depends upon a few things like sensor, lens, light, depth. Talking about it. Then afterwards we'll be talking about accessories that are used for macro photography. Those are reverse rings, diopters, and extension tubes. After that, I'll be showing you my journey about how I started to grow in macro photography, how I started, then how I grew, like what was the procedure I followed to grow myself. Then lastly, I'll discuss about the gear that I used and I'm currently using. So let's see. So macro photography definition says when an object is represented at least 1:1 ratio on the camera sensor, it is called as macro photography. So that means in simple language that the size of an image on your sensor is equal to the size of the item you're photographing in real life. So this applies to the like full frame cameras, where the sensor size, like the image that is projected on the sensor size, is exactly the same of the object that is in existence. So that's the definition of macro photography. So it depends upon 2 to 3 factors like the camera sensor. So we have like for taking examples, we'll take 3 types of camera sensors. One is full frame, another is crop, and the third one is macro 4/3. So for macro, everyone might be thinking that full frame camera might be helpful for macro photography, but it's not like that, because it is a full frame camera and its sensor is big. The image that is projected on 1:1 ratio will be the life size. But if you use a crop sensor camera, so you can see the second image here. Can you all see the cursor?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you will see that by shooting with the crop sensor, the image gets more magnified, and by shooting with macro 4/3, it even gets more magnified. So it also depends upon the sensor. The drawback of using macro 4/3 is you cannot crop the image further. Like I can crop full frame image because the sensor size is quite big and the resolution of the image and the quality of image is quite good. But macro 4/3 image cannot be cropped as much as we can crop the full frame camera sensor, like the image produced by full frame camera sensor. Second is lens. So there are like 3 types of macro lenses, we can say. One is wide angle macro. So first image you can see wide angle macro. This lens is Laowa 15mm, which is a wide angle macro, and that has the capability, and it's the only lens that has the capability to project life-size images on its sensor, even though being wide. So second is mid-range macro lens. That is, you can see the second image. that is Tamron 90 mm, 100 mm, or like Canon, for Canon it is 100 mm. For Nikon it is again 105 mm. So these lenses are like mid-range macro lenses that you can use for macro photography. And the third type is tele lenses, which are tele macro lenses. According to my knowledge, I guess Nikon has 200 mm macro lens and Sigma has 180 mm macro lens. I'm not quite sure. So these are like telephoto macro lenses, which will help you to project 1:1 magnification ratio or life size images on your sensor. The second thing that is very important in macro photography is light. So the quality of light matters a lot when it comes to macro photography. So in the first image, you can see the light is hard. And how can you decide the light is hard? Like, how can you figure out? So you can see the edges of the shadows. These edges are quite sharp and crisp. So that makes the image look kind of ugly. Like you can use it creatively, but then for normally, like it looks kind of ugly. So in the second image, you can see it is much more softer. The highlights are not blown out. Like the details are preserved very properly. Like even the shadows are well lit. Even the highlights are well lit. Like this image is a raw image. Like I haven't edited anything in this. I just introduced a diffuser between my flash and the subject. So these are the types of flash or light sources you can use for macro photography. Some people prefer shooting in sunlight because uh, they don't want to carry external flash, or they might not be having any flash. So the second is this normal flash. So we can use this flash by adding a diffuser. Like every flash needs a diffuser because again, hard light and soft light. So the third flash that is like specially for used for macro photography is ring flash. So this can be attached directly on the lens. So it won't cast any shadows. Like you can see this is circular, so there's no directional light. Like it surrounds the subject with light. So it will help you to eliminate the shadows. Even twin flash. So even this is for macro photography especially, as it will cover the subject from both the sides. And lastly, if you don't have any flash, then you can use the built-in flash by introducing a diffuser between it. Because what will happen, like the main basic problem is when you flash or when you click a picture, the light which is falling on the subject will be obstructed by the lens. So the subject will be lit only half, or like you will see a patch of light, and that won't look good. So if you introduce a diffuser between the subject and the flash, then it will help you to make the light fall evenly everywhere. Second, so the third is depth of field. So basically depth of field is the distance between the nearest and the furthest object in an image that appears acceptably sharp. So you can see in the first image, this is not like both the sides, like upside and the side which is below, both of them are blurred, and you can only see a few words clearly, like the her, look, and the W. But in the second slide, you can see that almost everything is in focus. Like not almost everything, but around 1/3 of the image is in focus, unlike this image. So there are a lot of factors, like there are totally 4 factors that affects depth of field. That is aperture, focal length, distance between camera and the subject, and the sensor size. So we will go through every aspect. So first one is aperture. So in simple words, smaller f number, that is larger aperture. Smaller f number will make the like will result in shallow depth. Like there will be only a few things that will be in focus. And if you increase the focal length, if you increase the aperture or f number, like here it is f16, then you can get almost everything in focus. Like the problem with macro photography is the this thing that the depth is not as required. Like there are many instances that you want everything to be in focus, but due to these four factors which I'm going to tell, your pictures are not coming in focus or not coming with that proper depth which you want. So the second is focal length. So as you can see, the longer the focal length, shallower the depth. And as you decrease or shorten the focal length, you will start to get more depth. So like even the images which I showed previously, Laowa 15mm lens will, wait, I'll show. Yeah, so in this lens, using this lens, like even the landscapes, you can figure out that there are trees behind, there's a stream or like river something which is in behind, there are rocks, but in these images you won't figure out. In this you can at least figure out that there's some leaf, and that leaf is continuing even in the background. But here you can't figure out that it is like it is clicked with trees behind, or is it a curtain that is like colored green and yellow. Yeah, so for getting more depth you can try using 60mm lenses. Like for Nikon it is 60mm macro lens. Again even 40mm is there. That will help you to get macro images with even greater depth. Then the last factor that affects the depth is sensor size. So larger the sensor size, shallower the depth, and vice versa. You can see here, this is clicked with a full frame camera, and you can see like even like only this area is in focus, while you cannot figure out the details which are over here. But if the sensor is like shortened or used a macro four third macro four third camera, then you can see that the areas which are not focused in here, you will see that they are quite a bit focused in here. Like they have a bit of details. Like this segment, if you see, it have more details than this one. So these are the four factors that are affecting the depth of field in your macro photos. So the last one is distance from camera to subject. So I've clicked these images right before like the presentation. This one is with a longer distance from, like the subject was from a longer distance to the camera. And this one is the subject with a shorter distance to the camera. So I've cropped the image to make it look almost the same size. So you can see when I was close to the subject, you will see that this area of the coin is not having much details. But when I shifted back and I clicked the photo with the same settings, like there are no difference in the settings, I get like the entire coin in focus. I have some I have lot of details in this area as compared to this one. So let's talk about accessories that can be used for macro photography, or accessories that are for macro photography. So first one is reverse rings. So what is reverse ring? So this is the ring which you get, like it is the cheapest way to start macro photography. So you can introduce this lens between the camera body and the lens. So the ring comes here and it have the threads on both the sides. One side you can fix the camera body, and the other side, which is here, you can fix the lens. So, but you can, it gives the liberty to you to invert the lens while you fix it. Like the threads which are there on the other side will help you to attach the ring or the lens to the camera on the opposite side. So the merits of this system is you can get like really very decent magnification, and if practiced well, you can like focus properly. then you can get proper depth if you follow all the 4 things which I told before. And the demerits are your lens might get like fungus or might get dusty from the inside. So that will do cost a hole in your pocket, because like you'll have to service the lens. Like there's no other way you can save your lens without servicing it. It can be used indoors. Like I preferred it using indoors because I had more control over the dust and wind. So that made me like that made me use it quite well and get like macro images which I wanted. Second thing is diopter or filters. So basically these are extra elements of glass which will help you to magnify the image. Like it's just like you using a magnifying glass on your lens. That's it. So there are different types of lens. Like these ones you can get, you have to screw them on the front side of your lens. While this is the most popular one. Renox, they have 2 or 3 sets of these depending on the magnification. This one is Renox DCR 150, and the similar one comes with Renox DCR 250. Now 150 and 250 is nothing but the power of magnification. So 150 DCR 150 will make you like, it will allow you to magnify the image with 1.5x magnification, while Renox DCR 250 will allow you to magnify the image 2.5x. So you can get 2.5x magnification on a full frame sensor. And yeah, these are like really very like these comes very handy because you don't need to have any specialized lens. I mean, you can use it even for 1855, but you have to use it beyond 35 mm on a crop sensor. You can also use this, like it works really well if you use a telephoto lens like a 7300 or anything that is beyond 100 mm. So many of the cameras come with telephoto lenses these days. So you can use it with 18, 150, 140, whatever it is, because this will come with this universal adapter. Like it is like 42 to 57 mm diameter. You can use this lens, like lens having different diameters on their front elements. So this is universal, like you can fit it to almost every mid-range telephoto lenses. Then third one, like these are extension tubes. So even these will fit between your camera body and the lens. So there are lenses like these are, you can call them mini lenses without elements, because what they do is they just increase the distance from the lens to the camera body, and that will help you in magnifying the subject. Now the merits in these are, there is no glass element, so there is no loss of details, or there is no loss of what we say, yeah, loss of details or the quality of the image, because there's no glass element introduced in between the camera and the lens. But you need to use like high quality extension tubes, because what happens is they might rupture your body where the lens connects to the body. It can adversely affect that area, or it can like ruin the area where you connect the lens. And there are some demerits as well, because in case you are like shooting whatever comes across, like if you want to shoot birds, if you want to shoot like you are shooting birds and macro images at the same time, then if you use a Renox, then you can just remove it like it is a snap-on. So within seconds you can convert your telephoto lens into macro lens, and macro, like vice versa. You can use your telephoto lens as a telephoto lens by removing it in a few seconds. But for these you will have to remove the you have to detach everything, like the camera body as well and the lens, and you have to attach it again. Till that time you won't get time to like to track the subject. So I'll start with my growth as a macro photographer. So I have divided my journey into 4 levels. So first one was shooting indoors for ID, because didn't I didn't started macro photography for uh, because I wanted to. I just started it because I wanted to shoot spiders so that I can find their names or I can identify them. So that was the main thing due to which I started to take photographs, because like from which whom I started to learn about spiders and things about spiders. He told me that why don't you make a collection for yourself so that you can identify the spiders by yourself. So I clicked images of spiders. Like I used to collect them on field, then I used to bring them home, then I used to click photos of them so that I can label the images by asking him the ID. So I started with these images, like proper dorsal images in which you can see the like all the body features, legs, abdomen, thorax. So in identification, there are few things like which I consider. I don't know very properly how taxonomy is done, because it requires a microscope, or it requires a really standard uh, procedure which is to be followed for identification. But there are some hard and fast pointers which will help you to identify spiders on at least family basis, like till family level. So I started to take photographs of spiders. I used to bring them home. I used to take pictures of them behind like a clean background. So as you can see, there are really very different type of creatures that we are surrounded with, but we barely pay attention towards them. Like these almost have every color, like blue, red. These are fluorescent colors, and it really shines as if like it's decorated itself with the light, like lights. There are many things that are like ignored at like these spiders. Like you may find these ones at your home, but this spider is like a ground dwelling spider which will barely come to your home. So as you start exploring and as you start to look towards things, you'll start finding them and you'll start to look how different they are. Like these spiders are jumping spiders, and there are a few pointers that you can use. First of all, they keeps on jumping, and secondly, their eyes, like the front eyes which are in the between, they are quite big from the other eyes. You can see easily that their two eyes are big. So if you see those two big eyes, you can identify it as a jumping spider. Like you can roughly say that it's a jumping spider. Like these ones have small eyes, different, different body part, like body shapes and all. Yeah. So as I started to explore, uh, in few like seasons, insects tend to come to your home. Maybe they'll sit right below the lights and all. So you can try to shoot them as well. And it really like amazes to see how tiny these creatures are and how much details they carry. So this is a cuckoo wasp which was shot like uh, when lockdown started, I guess. So I was like totally stunned to see how intricate details and colors these flies have. Yeah, this is a huntsman spider. Its family is Eusparasis. It is also found in like it's found in drylands, and it is called as huntsman spider because it goes on hunting without building a web. So second level is like firstly I started to shoot spiders and things by bringing them home or while they are at my home. But as I started to uh, like explore more, I realized that I have shot these spiders or things, but I don't know from where like where do they belong. Like if you see the spiders which I showed you, so you don't know that if this spider is found on tree or it is found on web. Like it builds web, or like what, where is it found? even this, like if I wouldn't have told you that this spider is a ground dwelling spider, you might not have came like you might not have came across that to know that this spider is found on ground, because like they do not represent their habitat. So I secondly for pushing myself, I started to shoot insects and spiders whatever I found it, uh, wherever they are, like without manipulating the position of them, without like picking up the spider from ground and keeping it on the leaf. I started to shoot them however I can, like whatever the best I can do without manipulating the subject itself. So this is a plant hopper which you can see, like it is found on twigs and branches. So I started to explore this as well, like spiders. So this one you can see it is on a leaf. This is a jewel spider. Like I don't, yeah, Sirta arachne. Its name is Sirta arachne, and it is called as grass jewel spider, which is found on leaves. Like you can see them sitting in this position on leaves. So this is the resting position which I tried to shoot without manipulating it. This is the this is the female of grass jewel spider, and this is the male. So these two were found quite close to each other, and I tried to shoot in their position, however they are sitting. So this is a crab spider, Thomisus. Its name is Thomisus. So these can be found mostly on plants and flowers. So now you can see that these do differ, like their habitats do differ, microhabitats, which are quite important to convey the information about the species itself. Like you will not find this spider resting in this position on a twig, but you can see grasshoppers or this plant hoppers there. So like that, these spiders are mainly like ambush predators. They use camouflage for like hiding from bees and flies, so that whenever they come to drink the nectar from the flowers, they'll just grab them and they'll start to feed on them. Yeah, so this is a parasitoid wasp. So this is a standard lateral shot. I just didn't want it to show any clutter or anything, but these flies tend to rest on leaves or twigs in this way. Like they don't move if you if you disturb them, they will fly off. So this is quite tricky to shoot. Like spiders are quite easy, I can say, because they don't fly. And to the most, if you disturb them, they'll go either downwards or slightly to the direction of wind. But this is quite tough. Like this was quite tough for me because firstly, I don't have to disturb the subject, because it will not fall down, but it will just fly off, and there will be barely any chance for me to shoot it again. Then this reptiles and snakes. So I do go for herping and all, but there are a few people with me, like who will keep track on the snakes. Like even though I was quite close to it, I have two friends who are spotters, and those people told me if I was too close to the snake or not. Like because this is a non-venomous snake, so it's not a deal. But why should I take risk to get bitten by any of these? So it is quite important to maintain the distance as well and follow the ethics to get good shots. It's not like you have to break the ethical laws, and you have to uh, tame the you have to get the subject in an aggressive pose to get good shots. You can get really decent shots, however they are. Like this one was like resting below a rock which was half in the soil and halfly it was above the soil. So it was in between that. So when we tried to move the rock, it just stayed still. So this is a termite. So there are a lot of subjects that are around us. Like you can shoot ants, you can shoot termites, you can shoot flies. There are a lot of subjects that are around us. You don't need to go for like longer distances, or you don't need to go for a special place to do macro photography, as it is for birding, or it is for like big mammals, big cats. You have to go for you have to go to sanctuaries and national parks to shoot big cats and all. But insects, you can find them anywhere and everywhere. So this is a worker termite ant which was just trying to smell, maybe smell the its what we say, group members, I guess. It was trying to find out what is wrong with the group, or what smell is this. Yeah, so after that comes the subjects that are dangerous but are quite what we can say, calm. So scorpions will never come to you and they will sting you. Like they won't sting you unless they are poked or they are disturbed. So you can see that this spider is this scorpion is in its resting position. How can we say? Because its stinger is not that what we say, alert. Because if it feels that it's getting disturbed, it will raise its stinger, and it will in some scorpions they also try to like hold their claws in air. So there are quite a few scorpions that are harmful, and how can you identify them is with their claws. Like it is a like rough, hard and fast rules which you can use on field to identify if it is that venomous or not. Like for scorpions, it is if their claws are not powerful or their claws are small, their venom is strong. So because their venom is strong, they don't need much physical power to hold on to their prey. The prey just dies and falls off nearby, so they can again go and find them and have their meal. Yeah, so after that, really very fast subjects. Like this is a flesh fly which just flew off because of the flash. Like you'll barely get another chance to shoot it again, because there are subjects which are sensitive to light as well. Because as you use, or as you uh, power your flash on them, they'll just respond to it and they'll run off or they'll fly off. So this is second example, which was like, this one was quite calm, but the same example, if it flies off, I won't get any other chance to shoot it. So you'll have to be you'll have to dial in your settings, and you'll have to dial in your you'll have to dial in your settings very carefully, because you might get only one shot to record the specimen. Like if I wouldn't have paid attention to the settings which I was using, I might have got this shot quite underexposed or quite overexposed, or might be the depth is very shallow. So you'll have to pay attention to your camera settings as well. So the third thing which I started to add is a little bit of aesthetics. So this snake was shot at I guess Amboli. Yeah, I went there and it was raining a bit. So it was just on a like branch. It was just resting there at night time. So I went there and I tried, like there are a lot of shots of these snakes with aggressive behavior, open mouth, and like those are unethical images, and I didn't want it to take any of those. So what I tried is, I tried to frame the subject in a way that it will look beautiful. Like it will not only show the subject, but it will also make the image in itself look beautiful, other than the species, like other than the subject in it. So this is a garden lizard. It is quite common subject, that is like you can find them in your backyard, you can find them anywhere. So I tried to like shoot this a bit symmetrically. So that adds to this image, that makes the image look beautiful, and also that enhances the beauty of the creature which is being photographed. This is a leopard gecko, which is like quite common in few areas, but you may not find them very easily. Like these are specific seasons, and you'll find them at night, mostly at night. So this is the only gecko in the world that have eyelids. No other gecko in the world have eyelids. This one have eyelids, and I wanted to show how beautiful this gecko looks from side. So this is a profile pic, like side profile picture, which I clicked, showing like roughly showing its habitat. And also I tried to show I tried to add the background which is dark, so that I can like get to know that this image was clicked at night. And this like the total image adds to the features of this gecko. Yeah, so after that I started to explore more about the things that I have. Like you may not always get good shots by going in, but like going close to the subject, but you can also get really nice pictures by stepping a bit backwards or using a wider lens. So this one was shot using 1855 mm. So it's not even a wide angle lens, or not even a wide angle macro lens. It's just a normal lens which everyone has, like almost everyone have this lens. So you can utilize the equipment which you have in a way that you can make images look good. So this image do show that it was clicked at day. It do adds that you can find the butterflies on twigs and the areas which they live. Like they are in our surroundings. Near our homes, you can find them. You can find them everywhere. So these things adds to your image, and also it makes your image look quite unique. Yeah, so even this shot was clicked using 1855 mm, and like you don't need to take horizontal shots always. Now what I saw is this snake was sitting right between two stones. So that did made it look ugly, because my flash was not uh, reaching to the subject properly, and it was not getting lit evenly. So what I tried is I shot this vertically. I tried to keep the composition uh, in like in the middle, like symmetrical, quite symmetrical. And I got I got lucky. I was waiting as well, but I got lucky that it flickered its tongue, and which is captured in this image. Yeah, so this is another example of wide angle close-up photography. I can't say it's a macro image, but you can call it as a close-up photography. So even this one is shot using 1855 mm and an external flash using a diffuser. So you can easily figure out that this is near some farm. There's sugarcane behind, there are trees. You can figure out that it is daytime. So it just look nice. And it also makes the subject looks larger than life. It looks like the subject is quite large, and like even though it is small. Yeah, so after that, this one was clicked again at Amboli. It's a Malabar pit viper. And here I wanted to show that it is resting in the hollow of a tree. It rained a few hours back when we found this. It was raining, so it might have went inside the tree hollow, where I didn't want it to like poke the subject or try to bring it out, take extremely close up. What I did is I just shifted back. I used my 1855 mm to get the full subject in the frame, and that really makes the image look good. Yeah, so this one was shot using 1855 mm reversed. So now you can see here that it is on a leaf. You can see it's in its like it's building its home, and it is resting. It is, you can say, protecting it. So adding a bit of composition to your image makes it look good, because you can see that its face is facing on the left side. So if you keep more space to the left side, you can find out that the image looks more beautiful. Like you can see the composition. Like now here the subject in itself is what we can say, filling the frame. So there was no point in keeping space in front of its face. But here as well, looking at the composition, I had tried to maximize the space in front of its face. So these small things will make your images look good. So this one was, this is a common house gecko which was newly hatched. My mother told me to like literally throw this out because it came into our bathroom. So I picked it up, I went out and I tried to release it back in my backyard. So I saw that it was cleaning its eye. So I just waited for a minute and observed that how is it cleaning its eye, and is there a rhythm which it is following while cleaning. So I saw that in specific time interval it used to clean its eyes. So I tried to capture that image and I was quite successful in that. Yeah, after that comes the subjects which are like documentation of what's going on. Here you can see there's a cricket which is naturally dead. Now you can see uh, like quite, it's not quite common to see insects naturally dead, because there's always someone which will uh, like hunt on it, or there are always cleaning agents like ants. Ants clean whatever they find. So it was quite new for me to explore a dead insect which was dead naturally and was infested by a fungus. Yeah, this one is from Amboli. I tried to show where this spider is found. Like you can find its web in the leaves. As you can see, due to fog or due to mist, the water droplets were collected on the what we say web, and it really made it look very beautiful. So your photography also depends on the time of the subject. Like if you explore your surroundings in daytime, you will find different types of subjects, and if you explore the same place at night, you may find different subjects there. So the time of the day or the place where you are finding subjects to shoot is also very important, because you may not find the subjects which are found close to a lake or pond in a place that is totally dry. So even habitat matters when it comes to subjects. Yeah, so fourth level which I uh, recently tried to explore more is uh, the shots which are taken for the purpose of art. Like I don't want to show the what we say, the importance in the image is not about the subject, it is about the feel of this image. It is about the image and not about the subject. And also documentation, like what the subject is, and the natural history, that sometimes things happen in nature which are not commonly seen by us. So I like to document that as well. So as you can see, I tried to, like I could have gone closer to the subject and shot this flies which are either mating or it is a courtship display. But I loved the way that I took the flower and I took the flower in my frame. So it doesn't make it look bad, or you can figure out that it is not about the subject only flies. It is about the total image which you are making. So that makes your image an artwork. Secondly, this is a shot of leaf cutter bee, which I planned before shooting. Like this image was taken at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So how did I got this black background, and how did I manage to light the subject from behind? So I used off-camera flash. I used a trigger on my camera and placed the flash behind the subject. I also placed a black cloth behind the subject so that I can get a black background. Then when I tried to capture the image, I was not able to focus it. So I switched the lens to manual. I manually focused on the hole which is here, in which it is going. And I just waited for the correct time so that this fly will come and I can take a picture. So by using higher aperture value, so this was shot at around f18. So using higher aperture and faster shutter speed, anyways, my image was getting dark. And because I used external flash, only the parts which are exposed properly got lit. So this was a well-planned shot. And according to me, it was like a success. Yeah, so this one is termite, like the same termite ant hill, which like I showed the previous termite, like this is the same one. So here it was trying to sense the smell which is in the air. So firstly, I thought that I have took a lot of images in which this termite ant is isolated. So I tried to show the habitat a bit and also add drama to it by using light creatively. So here the shot was taken using off-camera flash. So the light was right above it. So this area is not light up properly. And you can see there are other ants as well. There are baby ants which are like roaming around. And you can see this one, like even the composition was like I deliberately kept negative space in here because I knew that I am going to enhance the light which is coming from here that will add to the subject. So here it was not about this single termite ant, but it was totally about the image. Again, this one. So the reason I didn't go as close because uh, when you shift back to smaller subjects, they will try to add some emotions to your photography. So here you can see that this, like, I get lonely feeling after seeing this image. Like this image looks very calm because you know that the subject will not fly off, or it is not too fast. There is nothing distracting. Even the curve of the leaf is quite sober. There is nothing with sharp pointing, what we say, distraction, which will distract you from the subject. So I love this image because like I didn't use any fancy tools for this, just my basic kit lens and external flash. That's it. Yeah, so this one was shot using a reversal ring, and I like this image because it looks like it is carrying a flag, and like these actions happen very fast, and it was very hard for me because it was not running horizontal. This shot is actually vertical shot, where this ant was lifting the spider mold up the tree. So I had to shoot it vertical, and then I just rotated the image. And I like this image like because I know that it is quite hard for me to get exactly same image like this next time. So it was a good example. So yeah, so sometimes things you have to be ready for everything. Like things will happen in a second. Like this is a longhorn beetle which came to my home uh, because the light was on, and when I released it back, it tried to again fly off because the light of my head torch was on. It was again trying to fly off and sit on the diffuser or try to hit my face because there was the headlamp. So after one or two times, when I saw that this insect is trying to fly, and for a split second it waits before it opens its wing properly, I thought of shooting it. So I mounted my camera on a tripod and I just waited until the wings just open up and right before the takeoff. Yeah, so this is another natural history moment, you can say, that this spider is feeding on the caterpillars. I don't know whether it is a caterpillar of butterfly or moth, but this is a natural phenomenon which happens in nature, but we are not quite aware of. The caterpillars are just hatching from their eggs, and there's this spider which is having a feast. Like, the caterpillars are defenseless, they can't do anything, and this spider is taking totally full advantage of it. And I just left it there. Like, I took a couple of shots and I just left it there, and I was quite sure that the spider will make a temporary home near this leaf because there is a lot of food available there. So there are these situations in nature that are quite rare, or can be said that not documented quite well. So if you pay attention to the surroundings, if you pay attention to the subject and what the subject is doing as well, your images will like have a purpose and they will make sense. Yeah, so like you've seen most of the shots which are taken by shifting backwards. Like, I tried to show the surrounding of the subject, but after that I noticed that I can go even more closer to the subject. So that will help me making abstract images. Like, as you can see, this is a garden lizard. Even like, this is not a rare specimen or something. It is very common. You can find them in your backyard. You can find them anywhere. So I try to compose this and keep it like in the golden ratio or golden spiral, you can say. That composition I tried, and the image came well because there are really very nice details around the eyes and in the eyes as well. So that makes the image look good. Yeah, so this second abstract image is a wing of butterfly. So even this butterfly was resting very calmly without any movement, like without any movement. So I got really plenty of time to frame my shot and to check if full subject is in focus. Like, you can not only go further from the subject, but you can go more close and get something different like this. Yeah, so this one is a saw-scaled viper. Even here, what I did was I used a live view camera. Like, I used the live view which was on my camera. I used my kit lens, and the main protection which was provided to me while clicking this shot was by my diffuser, because my diffuser was totally covering the like totally covering me. There was no way that this snake will reach out to me if it strikes. So even this is one of my favorite image because it is totally filled. You can see those eyes which are like cat, and they are staring you. Like, images in which the subject is having directly eye contact with you or with the lens, it makes more sense. Eye contact with the lens, the images comes out to be more beautiful. So this one is a hill termite gecko, which I shot from front. Even here you can see that the gecko is looking straight at me. I tried to like compose it symmetrically, so that really makes it look very beautiful. This one was also featured on Instagram page of National Geographic India. So yeah, this was quite celebrated image. Yeah, so these are the few shots that I tried to shoot with subject directly facing me. This is a robber fly, which have really very beautiful details in, and as you can see, the compound eyes, these lenses, like these small lenses, are really placed quite beautifully, or you can say some algorithm is used while placing these eyes. But like it stuns me that how these creatures carry such a beauty in small space. Yeah, so here's another photograph of spider. So as I told you before, that you can identify jumping spiders because of their large eyes, like frontal eyes. You can observe them here. So this one also is very like quite a good close-up, and I also have cropped this image a bit to fill the frame. So yeah, it will always look good if you fill the frame properly. Yeah, so this one is uh, a crab spider which mimics to be an ant. So difference between this spider and a jumping spider is jumping spider have big eyes in between, while this spider have big eyes on the lateral side. Like the eyes which are in between are smaller than the eyes which are around it. So this is its resting position. Like it rests like this. It warns other insects like this. You will definitely find these spiders in this position. Like they barely rest with their these four frontal legs touching the ground. They only use them for walking, hunting, and for like warning. Yeah, so this is another bizarre thing which I came across. Like my brother is having a fish tank, and he told me that there are some parasites which are in their fish tank and on their fishes as well. So I told him that I want to have a look. As I went to see, I saw that they were translucent. I saw that they had no color, and they had a bit details. Like the individual, like this one was around 2 to 3 millimeters in length. This is called as a fish flea, and each one of this is around 2 to 3 millimeters of length. So here, what I did was I tried to make a tripod type of thing. Like I kept boxes and boxes on each other. I kept my camera facing downwards as if it is like I was basically this is a flat lay. Then I took a few of these specimens on a slide, and behind the slide I used a black cloth, and the things which are like which can be seen as if they are stars, those are the dust particles. And the result came out so well that this image literally looks like this is some alien stuff, and these are like alien spaceships or aliens which are flying in the space at night in the sky. So yeah, I haven't posted this image yet. I'm waiting for a good platform so that maybe I can send this for some competitions or something. Yeah, so in documentation again comes this. Now I don't know how rare it is or how unusual it is. Like rare is not the word, but how unusual it is to find a parasitic larva feeding on a live spider. So lifestyle, like life cycle of these insects is quite very complicated. So, and these life cycles are also quite fast. Like uh, the larvae, like the eggs hatch in, like in insects, some of the eggs hatch in 8 days, 5 days, 3 days. Then their larva turns into like their larva goes under metamorphosis in like within hours to days, a few days. So you don't know that how much time you will get to see this. Like this one was, I saw this feeding on the spider. The spider was quite small, so I tried to shoot it with Renox on. Then it came quite well, and this is now a good documentation shot for me to tell that I saw a parasite on a spider. Yeah. So secondly, this is uh, like showing, this can't be seen as a natural history, but you can say it more like a behavior. Like this is a mother scorpion which carries, like almost every scorpion carries its babies for like 8 to 9 days on their back until their skeleton, like exoskeleton. These scorpions have exoskeletons which are soft when they are born, and as a few days pass, they tend to get quite rough. So that provides protection to their young ones. So these animals do these things. Like I didn't know that it might have been providing protection. Like the mother must be providing protection to the insects. Like many of the people think that only humans are the ones who take care of their young ones, but no, there are not only other animals but also small creatures that have brain not more than a size of a mustard seed, or you can say a pea, but they do have these sense of behaviors which they follow for their own protection or protection of their young ones. So this is a female spider that is carrying her babies on her back, to provide protection, and secondly to feed them. Like these scorpion babies will feed on uh, whatever their mother will hunt. Yeah, so this shot is of a worker ant and an ant with other species. Like this ant was naturally dead and had this fungus on it. And there are some fungus which can spread, like which can totally wipe out whole colonies of ants. So when ants come across stuff that have already fungus on it, and that fungus can be harmful to them, they tend to like dump the dead or the fungus infected things far away from their nest. So this shot was featured at Century Asia. Like this one was printed in Century Asia book. Even this photograph was featured in Century Asia book. So these are some behaviors that these animals have and can be observed when you go quite close to them and you observe for them quite a while. Yes, this is another example of maternal care. This mother spider is egg sac, and you can see babies have come out as well. So you can see that this spiderling, which is approaching to its mother, is like this is not usual for me as well. I have seen spiders and spiderlings separate, but this was the very first time for me to see spiders and their young ones together. Yeah, so evolution of my gear of macro photography over time. So I started my macro photography with using a reverse ring. Yeah, so this one was shot using reverse ring. So you can see that the depth is quite shallow. I have cropped the image, like heavily cropped the image. Depth is quite shallow. But I tried to pull out quite a well shot because the subject in itself is quite interesting. Yeah, so reverse ring helped me to gain control over a few things like focus. So it helped me to focus things properly because it is very sensitive. Like macro lenses will at least forgive a bit of camera shake, which we do while breathing or while pressing the shutter button. But when you use the reverse ring, it is very, very sensitive, and that will not like that will a small jerk in your uh, jerky moment in your uh, process of taking photo will huge focus shift in your image. Secondly, kit lens. So when I went to Amboli, I figured out that the weather there was not well, that I can shoot things with reverse lens that will make the rainwater or rain droplets go inside my lens. So I tried to shoot with my 1855 only without reversing it. So even that time I realized that I haven't actually tried using 1855 uh, properly. Thirdly, Tamron. It is like really relief for me. Like switching to a macro lens, a proper macro lens was quite relief for me because that did help me to gain control over all three factors like the shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. And I had quite like not quite really nice control over the lighting as well. And lastly, Tamron plus Renox. So using Tamron, first of all, it was like helping me to get quite good macro images. But when I started to add Renox to it, my images had really nice magnification. So that again unlocked a door for me that I can go even more close to the subject. So thank you for your patience and listening to me. Now you can like feel free to ask any questions if you have. Do we have any questions, guys? You can unmute yourself and ask the questions. Hi, Gerald. Gerald says, I have traveled a lot to various places, hence would like to know what lenses would you consider that will meet my requirements for travel, landscape, and related shoots too, and also macro, if I add to my collection. And also to cut off the weight while I trek or explore, what would you suggest lighting for macro shoots apart from the natural light? Okay, so Gerald, thanks for your question. So now you travel a lot and you might be carrying a lot of gear with yourself. What you can do is you can invest in a DSLR which have like DSLR which will come with a kit lens. So with the accessories which I told you will help you to uh, like meet your requirements because if you take a for example Canon camera with a 1855 and 55 to 50 kit lens which it comes along with, so you can use that lens 1855 you can use it for taking landscape pictures, and if you spot a bird which is quite close to you, or if you spot any other mammal or any other animal, snakes, you can use the other lens which is 55 to 50, and for turning it into a macro lens you can use Renox. Like I prefer using Renox because it is very quick. You like very quickly you can switch from telephoto to wide angle to macro, like it will help you. So I prefer using any camera body uh, with focal length more than 100 because that is what that will affect your macro images. So a decent camera with kit lens along with a Renox DCR 250 will be ideal for you to shoot. And when it comes to flash, so you can invest in a like a traditional flash which is this one. So I use this flash mainly on my camera body and off camera as well. So this helps me to, like, this is the cheapest from Godox. The cheapest flash, it is Godox TT520 second generation. So I use this for every images. So yeah, this flash will be good for you, because you can use this flash for other photography as well. Like, this will not be specific to macro, but you can also use them in night. Like, I know that you travel in caves and all, so while taking photographs in caves, you can use this flash as well, and you can use it for macro. So Renox, like normal camera with a kit lens with Renox DCR 250 and any cheap flash will help you to get good images. I hope that answers your question. So second one is from Raghav Gupta. Which accessories do you think any beginner macro photographer should buy, from reverse ring, diopters, or extension tubes? Okay, so hi Raghav. The mistake which I did was I started with a reverse ring. Like, it was a, I can't say it was a mistake, but it was like I used it extensively and I used it everywhere. Like, I didn't care later onwards ki if I'm shooting it on field or if I'm shooting it uh, indoors. I just, whenever I used to see a subject, I used to switch my lens inversely, and that did ruin my 1855 mm, and it has now, like, it has really very bad dust on the elements which are there inside the lens. It the lens has grew fungus on its elements. Now I am like regretting that I switched the lenses on field. So you can use Renox. Like, I recommend Renox. Even though this talk is not sponsored by Renox, I refer them. Like, I recommend to use Renox.
Thank you.
So next question is by, just a minute.
The next question is by Rushikesh Karandikar. Can I read it out loud for you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So he has asked, how important is it to learn macro photography? Will it help with the other aspects of photography like product or portrait, or even abstracts and landscapes?
Okay, hi Rishi. So it is quite important to learn macro photography because there are a lot of subjects that are to be shooted yet. Like, the images of mammals and all are shoot quite well, or they are documented quite well, but the lesser known, or the flora and fauna which is ignored quite heavily, is this one. Like, most of the people squash insects, most of the people kill whatever comes to their home. Like, even though it is a mosquito, it carries a lot of details, and after you start shooting them or you start to take a closer look towards them, you will find out that these insects do carry a lot of details in them, and they do look quite beautiful. And somewhere you will start to, like, not kill them, but you will start to release them back to the nature where they can be, where they can live. And in other aspects, yeah, you can, if you want to shoot things creatively, macro photography can help you. Like, if you let's suppose if you want to shoot product, then you can use macro lens, and you can use macro photography techniques for so products which are quite small, like jewelry, which is at times quite which carries quite details. So being a macro photographer, that will help you to compose things under the focal length which you are using as well. And for portraits, yeah, you can do concepts. Like, I've seen a lot of concepts where people have shot a picture of their friends, or picture of eyes, and those in that eyes, they have reflected some other object, or they have reflected the Indian tricolor. Like I have seen many of the images on Instagram while 26th January and 15th of August, that it's a really tight close-up of eyes in which you can see Indian tricolor. So you can try out things in that as well. For abstracts, it's like it depends on you. Like you can even shoot, like there are people who shoot slow shutters in macro. Even the recent runner-up of Nature in Focus was a macro image, like close-up image of a firefly bug. Like I remember that shot, which is a long exposure image, and the firefly bug is lighting up, like you can see the light trail of that bug. So you can just mix and match. And as this lesser known fauna and flora is explored by you, people will keep on looking at it because they will not have any other place or any other source for them to have a closer look. So it is like, for me, I think it's quite important to learn macro photography. I hope that answers your question, Rishi. So the next question is from
yeah, the next question is from Pinakin Kambur. He's asked two questions. How to increase magnification of a Nikon 105mm? It already has 1:1 magnification. And the second question is, have you experimented with phone macro lens like Moment or Signy?
Okay, so hi Pinakin. So for increasing the magnification of Nikon 105mm, you can club the accessories. Like you can use Renox to get 2.5x more magnification. So if you are using a full frame sensor, you will get a 1:1 magnification. If you add Renox to it, you will get 2.5x magnification. And if you want magnification more than that, then you can also add extension tubes. Like there are 3 sets of extension tubes. If you add a whole set, again, I don't remember properly, but it will help you to get more magnification than 1:1 ratio. You might get 2:1, like 2 point, like by adding Renox itself, you are getting 2.5x magnification. So when you will club extension tubes with macro lens with Renox DCR 250, then I'm sure you will get more magnification than other lenses. And there are quite lenses that are like really very nice, but one of them is for Canon. The lens is MPE 65. So that lens starts itself at 1:1 magnification ratio, and the max it can go is 5x magnification. So you can again add extension tubes or Renox filter to that lens to increase its magnification furthermore. So these accessories which I've been showing, they can be clubbed together or mixed and matched so that we can get the desired magnification. The second thing is, second question is, experimented with the phone macro lenses. Okay, so I personally haven't been doing macro photography with my phone because firstly I don't have a phone that has good quality on their camera. So like I haven't upgraded my phone from quite a while now. So I thought I'll invest my money in these lenses after I get a good camera, like good phone for my camera. So I haven't, but there are a few lens companies which I've been hearing that they are really very nice. Like one of them is Apexel. Yeah, I've heard Apexel from quite well. It comes from various magnifications as well. Like they even have 10x, 15x lenses, so you can try them out. So yeah, even phone macro photography is really quite vast in itself because there are a lot of phone macro photographers who are doing really amazing stuff using only their phone and a macro lens.
Yeah, so Gerald has a follow-up question. He says, talking
Yeah.
about off-camera flash, do you require an assistant or help from others? And with this, will it affect the movement of species, considering the fact that they are highly sensitive to light? So he is asking this question as there may be some problems with some rare individuals he may come across. I think this is the last question we'll take for today.
Actually, some more questions I have, like they have.
We have exceeded our time limit actually, so sorry. But
It's
maybe
okay.
you can get in touch with Apurva on his Instagram account. He's already put his handle. So if anybody has any rest of the questions, you can directly contact him on Instagram.
Okay, sure. So lastly, I'd like to answer you, Gerald, that taking like these off-camera flashes, like you get a few attachments which are like, I have got a stand of like, we can't say a stand, it's like a flat frog on which you can mount your flash, so you can make it stand. So we have some of these things, like you get a tripod mount on which you can mount your flash, and there are a few things. Yeah, so there are, you need two lights in while shooting macro at night, because one light needs to be acting as a assistant light. So you can use your headlamp for that, so that your camera can focus on the subject properly. And secondly, the flash which we are using is like, it lights up in fraction of a second. So it does affect the subject, but as you are in the dark, it won't go that low, as I think. So you just need to pay attention to your continuous light which you are using, because that will affect the subject more than your flash. Okay, so
Thanks, Apurva. I think all those questions you can direct him on his Instagram. Really sorry for the delay, but I think we have exceeded our time limit today. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, and we look forward for all of you to attend our rest of the webinars. We are conducting this every week. And if you have missed any of our earlier webinars, you can check it out on our YouTube channel as well. You can get in touch with Apurva or our team on Instagram. Our handles are in our, you can find Apurva on Instagram as well. Thank you so much, Apurva, for conducting this webinar and explaining everything about macro photography. Thank you so much for attending.
thank you so much everyone for attending the session, and thank you so much for thank you so much Journeys for making this session happen, because like this is the first time I'm doing a session. So thank you so much for providing me a platform. You've been a great support to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.